The pandemic has accelerated the shift towards digital transformation and cloud adoption for many businesses. As companies look for ways to become more cost efficient, agile, and even innovative, many are turning to cloud migration as a solution. Now, in the past, companies migrated their data every 4 to 5 years when they refresh their storage infrastructure. CIOs and storage experts now think differently about how data centers should be built and optimized. So, if you aren't talking about your future in the cloud, then I guess you're not paying attention. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Analytics Insight podcast, where we talk about the ever evolving technology space. I'm your host, Priya Deyalani. Now, the shift towards a more flexible storage architecture, even in a hybrid cloud environment, has created the need to migrate data much more frequently, fueling the demand for data mobility. Now, to talk more about data mobility and cloud migration, today we have Mr. Yogesh Anyapanawar, founder of Datamotive.io, an enterprise workload mobility company providing the most cost effective quality solution for cloud migration and disaster recovery. So, hi Yogesh, how are you doing? Welcome to our podcast.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Priya, for having me on this.
Glad to have you with us. So let's start with providing or making our listeners know about Datamotive.io and what is its core mission.
Datamotive is primarily a product company. We're founded in 2021. We are a accredited VC funded company. We just recently closed our pre-series A round as well. Headquartered in Pune, we also have sales offices in Orange County in US. What Datamotive essentially does is that we fall into the category of what is called as a hybrid multi-cloud workload portability area. So essentially, the core areas where Datamotive works in is, as you earlier mentioned, it is workload mobility, primarily focusing on migration, and as well as business continuity, which is more on backup recovery, disaster recovery, high availability, those kind of areas. So we have products in each of these areas. But the core mission for Datamotive is essentially to create a bridge between on-prem and public cloud models. So essentially providing seamless mobility across on-prem environments like VMware or public clouds like AWS, Azure, Google Cloud, Oracle Cloud. This is building a bridge between them is what our primary focus is. So for the end customers, who are actually getting into this hybrid multi-cloud model, it becomes a very seamless experience to work or utilize the best offerings that they essentially want from variety of these sources. So that's what our primary focus and our core mission is. Priya.
Great, thank you for sharing with us, Yogesh. I truly believe that since we are living in a cloud driven business landscape, I think cloud migration is a very important aspect if I'm in a mid-size scale or a large scale organization. But as technology continues to evolve, just like you said, I think many companies are looking for ways to improve the infrastructure as well as the performance. Now, like I mentioned, cloud computing has become so popular among companies today that they are finding that the legacy systems like servers or their firewalls are quite unreliable, and they're also becoming very inefficient, if I would say. So because these the legacy systems are not operating at their optimal capacity, and hence we are witnessing a major shift towards the cloud adoption services. Now, having said that, could you also let us know about your proactive role and your contribution to the company as well as the industry overall?
Yes, absolutely. So uh, just to set a little bit of a background, right? Me and my team, we have been in this cloud computing space for over 20, 25 years overall. And what we have seen essentially that has happened throughout this last 20, 25 years, or especially the last 15 to 20 years, is the way people adopt these public clouds, right? So there is always a surge on that. There is always a model to do innovation faster, right? And the cloud platforms especially allow you to do that. But it also comes at a certain price, right? Again, not every company will be the same bucket where they have significant funds to invest in all of these areas. And that's where companies like Datamotive and that's where essentially where we come into play, where we are simplifying those models where they can actually make the best choice for them. So in terms of our contributions, essentially, right, Datamotive was formed based on that idea, right? That we should be able to provide freedom of decision making to the end customer. So if they are currently on the cloud or they want to save on money, they can think of moving to on-premise. If they are on-premises and they are essentially looking to modernize their infrastructure, they should have the ability to move to the public clouds and essentially make this not a one-time activity, but as and when needed activity. Right? That is the seamless mobility aspect that Datamotive comes into play. Uh, from a contribution to the industry perspective, of course, we are a patent pending technology. What we have built as our core platform is a first in the industry. Nobody else really has this technology right now. And of course, we will continue to grow and build on this and make sure that essentially whatever is the customer needs, whatever are the industry challenges today, we are focusing especially on those and making sure that the customer has that freedom, has that democratization of all of these public clouds available to them.
Right. I think it's so overwhelming to know that we have such technologies, cutting edge technology, like you said, or the patented technology that can help companies with managing their infrastructure and ensuring that the business operations are running smoothly. And I think that is why people are shifting to cloud computing and cloud migration is because they can scale computing resources up and down as needed without significant capital expenditure. Now, this is really important for companies that are rapidly growing so that they can quickly accommodate the new employees or customers and without having like a financial burden or deepen their pockets that way. Now, like you mentioned about your background and explained to us your journey, was there something specific that inspired the creation of Datamotive IO? And if there is, we would like to hear more about it.
Sure, sure, absolutely. So, as I said, me and the team, we have been in this space for over 20 years. And during these 20 years, I personally come from a technology background. So I'm a core file systems engineer at heart. But over the years, working especially in this storage, virtualization, and cloud computing space, and primarily working with or working on products from companies like VMware, Cisco, Dell EMC, NetApp, right, to just name a few. We realized that a lot of the focus is essentially on uh, where it is leading to essentially is to where the customer sticks with a particular vendor, right? Whether it is AWS or VMware or NetApp or Dell, right? And of course, that's the nature of the business. There is no company in the world which wouldn't want customers or wants to provide freedom. But that was the gap. So to put it very, very simply, once a customer adopts a particular cloud, let's say AWS, it becomes extremely difficult for that company to actually look at Azure or Google Cloud or even think about like a VMware or a Nutanix, right, as their core baseline platforms. And this is where the challenges really start coming up. Moving from one place to another is extremely difficult. Adopting different technologies as their customers need, that becomes extremely difficult. Usually, these migration projects will run, minimum 3 to 4 months, and you still don't really have a guarantee that everything is going to work as you expected at the end of the 3 or 4 month exercise, right? Sometimes these projects actually take years as well, of course, depending upon the size. But these can be very, very tiresome projects that IT teams internally have to execute. And of course, we all know, right? IT teams are always under the pressure to, bridge the gap between the effort that they put in, the value that they are providing to their business, and of course, innovating their technology while all of this is happening. It's not a good position to be as a IT head or a CIO or a security head of a serious company in this age right now. Right? I can very simply I can put it in that fashion. But all of these challenges essentially led to the creation of Datamotive. What we realized that if a particular set of technologies can actually be built, which enable this seamless mobility, which enables business continuity across hypervisors, across clouds, right? Then there is a enormous value addition that we will be providing to the customer. Essentially, we are telling them that you are no longer locked into a particular vendor. You are no longer locked into a particular cloud. You have the ability to adopt multiple platforms as you see fit, right? So now the decision making power is in the hand of the customer and not because of a decision that someone took maybe a few years ago on how the technology stack should look like, right? And that's the freedom that we are providing. And that's, as I said earlier also, that's our core mission. But this model essentially inspired the creation of Data, right? We embarked upon a good couple of years journey to just even figure out whether this building this technology is possible. And once we had a few breakthroughs, is after which we actually really started looking at the potential of what this technology can do, and then build the company based on that.
Right, I think you very well said that being an IT head or a security expert of a large scale company is definitely not an easy job. I think it's more of a responsibility, and I think it's very scary, I would say in simple terms, because
Yeah.
technology is changing every year, every day, and how do you keep up with the changing infrastructure is something the scary part of the job, I would say. So, and also like you said that every project has requirements, and sometimes the IT teams are involved like for months or years understanding the project requirements and providing a specific solution to meet those specific needs. And I think what comes into picture is the right strategy and planning, where I think you guys or the Data Motive company comes into picture and help the projects with proper cloud migration, and so that they can fully leverage and enjoy the potential of the benefits of cloud computing that way. But can you share some specific examples or innovative solutions or technologies that has been implemented by Datamotive IO?
Sure, absolutely. So, looking at the core platform, right? So there are typically when you're looking at mobility, which is migration, or you're looking at business continuity, primarily from a disaster recovery and backup perspective, right? There are a few things that actually come into play, right? One, of course, is the impact it has on the customer's production workflows, right? And the second aspect is on the security side. And third, again, very important, which I should add, is on what SLAs that you are actually providing from a disaster recovery. So Datamotive actually changes the paradigm in all of these three areas. So first and foremost, Datamotive is a completely agentless, WAN optimized, purpose-built replication engine. So agentless being the keyword here, right? Because we are agentless, we are working at a platform level. We actually provide or we have zero impact on the production system that the customers are running in their environment, right? And these could be on a public cloud, these could be on a on-premise VMware environment or Nutanix environment. It doesn't really matter, right? But we are working at the platform level and have zero impact on the production work. When I say zero impact, this is actually leading to the performance aspect as well as the security aspects. Customers don't have to worry about setting up their networking in a certain fashion. They don't have to worry about how they build their application stacks. They don't really have to worry about the allocating, specific memory or storage or compute for the agents if it was an agent-based model, right, running on their workloads, right? The second aspect there is on the security side, right? Because there are no agents, essentially, we are not compromising the security profile of the company. In essence, we actually improve the security profile of the company because now they have to punch lesser holes in their firewalls, lesser holes in their internal networks, right? So you don't really have to worry about that. The second major thing that Datamotive works on is the actual mobility and compatibility across clouds, right? So as I said, we are a patent pending technology. Where it leads to is that Datamotive can actually map the file systems across multiple clouds, right? So it's put it very simply, right? Datamotive can actually make a online Word document into a PDF or a PDF back into a Word, especially when people are editing. The only just to I mean make people realize the complexity of this. Datamotive is doing it at an operating system level. So we can essentially map an operating system while people are using it, while it is running into a completely different form, right? And bring it back if required. The third important aspect that we spoke about is from the SLA perspective, right? The what Datamotive essentially does, and again, this is a industry first commitment that Datamotive brings to the table, is Datamotive provides a flat line 10-minute recovery SLA, right? So whether you are migrating to the cloud or whether you are doing disaster recovery to a completely different platform, Datamotive provides a 10-minute RTO SLA, which is the recovery time objective, essentially meaning the time it takes to recover a certain workload or a set of workloads once a particular issue has been identified. So this with Datamotive is a flatline 10-minute SLA, irrespective of the size of the data. So even if you have 50 GB of data in your systems, or even if it is 10 terabytes of data in your systems, Datamotive will only take 10 minutes, right? And this number is a flatline number across cloud platforms. There are no differences or no catches, right? If you go to AWS, it is 15, absolutely nothing like that. Regardless of where you are going to where you are ending up, right? It is always a flat line 10 minutes. So our simple sales pitch on this statement is we tell our customers that, hey, let's say you're currently on-premise VMware environment. You want to move your workloads to AWS, right? We tell them you click a button on the Datamotive console and go grab a cup of coffee. Before you finish the coffee, you will actually be running on the AWS, right? So the downtime essentially is less than 10 minutes, right? And while they were doing all of this, their on-prem VMware systems were also working, right? But within 10 minutes, you are actually going to be running as a native AWS EC2 model, right? As native AWS workloads. So those are the three promises that Datamotive essentially makes, and the entire technology, the platform, replication engine, recovery engine, our automation workflows are all of that is completely implemented based on.
Well, if next time, if I would want to consider moving my workload and do a cloud migration, I think I'm going to go with the data motive. At least I'm going to enjoy my coffee while everything is happening in 10 minutes that way. So I think that's
Exactly.
that's really a very attractive or a very impressive feature that you spoke about, and I think our listeners would also love about it because I think the three qualities, and in short, I would say that your mobility solution is providing speed, agility, and also customization. And I think all of these three needs is what you need for a customer satisfaction and loyalty. And if that those three things are there, I think the other things like the delivery or payment configurations or the as and go assistance is something that you'll of course provide to them. So all of this is
Yes.
giving like a very seamless end user experience, I would say. So, while you have explained to us about the core technologies or the core promises that the solution is providing, could you also highlight some of the success stories or case studies that so that we could understand the effectiveness of your solution?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
So let me take one recent interesting use case that we worked with this company. So it's a European ERP CRM company. Basically, they are like the
Mm-hmm.
Zoho of Europe, a very large company. And they were working on a public cloud for quite a few years. The bills started piling up, and they were looking for options to essentially, especially after COVID, right? Everyone is managing their IT budgets very stringently. And one of the
Right.
pieces identified by this company was to essentially move to a on-premise cloud, right? Essentially. So what they did is they went the usual way. They talked to all of their IT partners. They looked at a few existing products. None of them were actually working for them. Either taking too long or the expected downtimes were too high, which as a
Mm-hmm.
very high-end uh, or I should say highly available company, everything is online for them. Their systems cannot really be down even for even for a couple of hours, right? They were facing these challenges in this mobility and this migration project. They came to Datamotive. We did our usual song and dance of proof of concepts and things like that. It did a beta deployment for them. Their success was basically, the way they claimed it, it was really really good. It was at a ridiculous level. They immediately adopted Datamotive, and what they were expecting to complete the project, the time that they were supposed
Mm-hmm.
to complete the project was about 4.5 months. With the Datamotive
Okay.
technology, they were able to actually complete it by themselves without involving any external partners within 3.5 weeks. So we literally
Oh, okay.
brought it down to like less than 20% of the effort
Less than
that they
20.
would have.
Right.
Now, additionally, so just to give some numbers around this, so they had approximately 100 different workloads, 100 different systems that they wanted to migrate, totaling around over 50 terabytes of data. And all of this had to be done where all of these 100 systems are actually online in the cloud, and they should have a less than 10 minute of downtime, right? So that were the criteria that Datamotive basically had to meet to make this a success. But we achieved all of that. We actually have glowing recommendations from this company. They basically called us a lifesaver because they ended up saving a huge amount of money as well. Not just because of the project was small enough, but because they were able to make very quick decisions on what to move and not to move. And if it is not working, then maybe keep it. But that agility of decision making was also extremely important and useful for them. So that's one of the interesting use cases. This one typically falls in the cloud repatriation area, where somebody is already on the
Right.
cloud, but for primarily, cost saving model, they had to move back to a on-prem data set. The second interesting use case that we are currently working on is where this is one of a very large BFSI sector companies in India, basically in the top three in India. They have a on-premise data center, basically again on VMware. What they wanted to do, or the way they were using this for their disaster recovery model, is they had a completely similar setup, disaster recovery site setup in a completely different data center. So essentially, they were paying double the cost of running their production just to make sure that they are well protected in case of any disaster events. So the cost of your infrastructure, which includes the space, the storage, the compute, networking, the cooling that is required for those data centers, the software licenses that are required, the people to manage them.
Right. Right.
All of this is essentially into two, right? It is 2x of what is required on the production. With
Mm-hmm.
the and this cost is really high, right? It basically doubles up your more or less doubles up your IT infrastructure budget just to have this in place.
Mm-hmm.
With Datamotive, we essentially enabled them to have a disaster recovery site on a public cloud, and this goes back to our hybrid multi-cloud model, where they continue to
Mm-hmm.
run their production workloads on their on-premise VMware data center. But now the DR site is basically either a choice of AWS or Azure, right? They picked one of those, and we actually completely reduced the need for their original DR site. So we halved their budgets or IT expenditure by
Mm-hmm.
literally removing that DR site and replaced it with cost
Yeah.
on the public cloud, but the cost is only for the
Mm-hmm.
storage. So it came
Okay.
down from hundreds and thousands of dollars to literally $50 per terabyte of data per month that they are now paying to the public.
Oh,
And interestingly,
okay.
we improved their SLAs as well. Earlier, they used to take 2 to 3 hours if there was a disaster. It used to take them 2 to 3 hours to actually recover their instances. We brought it down to a 10-minute window. So improvement of SLA as well as lowering that cost by, I would say, minimum of 60%, right, is what we
Mm-hmm.
were able to offer to our customers.
Great. I think that's quite impressive, Yogesh. And in today's world where we are reading the headlines of recession hitting soon or the inflation rates not coming down, I think one of the most important priorities for any organization, irrespective of the industry they are in, is keeping their costs low as much as possible. And especially with IT infrastructure and the changing landscape of technology, all of these things are, of course, getting way out of the budget for many of those companies, though they would want to adopt robust solutions. But one of the challenges that these people are facing is the upfront cost or the cost barriers that would probably disable their budgets as well. So I think this is a very important aspect that you shared with us as to how you and your company have been able to cut down the cost in terms of managing the IT infrastructure or in terms of cloud migration. So very, very thank you much. I'll thank you for that, for sharing that with us.
Absolutely.
Now, having said that, with the outbreak of the pandemic, I think everything shifted to remote, from your online shopping to working. It was estimated that around 26% of US employees were working remotely back then. And it is expected that around 36.2 million Americans will work remotely by 2025. So naturally, there is an influx of huge amount of remote data that has been accumulated, and that is going to impact and bring changes in the IT infrastructure as well. So
Hmm.
if it's changing how people work or engaging with the corporate databases and application, I think there are a lot of expectations that people have from corporate technology infrastructure. So I would want to understand from your perspective, what are the current trends in the cloud industry or in terms of even disaster recovery, and how do you think Datamotive.io is adapting to them?
Absolutely. So I think it is safe to say that, especially after the pandemic, as you rightly mentioned, dependency on specific systems, whether it is to control processes, whether it is to control the productivity of your teams, of your businesses, essentially it is all dependent on what the internal IT systems and how they are geared up for achieving all of these goals, right? So the trend primarily now drives down to more focused on innovation, the speed of innovation, how we are bringing or adopting new
Right.
technologies. The second aspect, again, as you rightly said, is a price-driven decision. Budgets are
Mm-hmm.
definitely not unlimited, right? There is always a certain cap on what you can do. And as I mentioned
Mm-hmm.
earlier, CIOs have to go through that very excruciating cycle of trying to figure out what best they can do at that point in time. Right?
Right.
And these are, I would say, the two factors that drive these trends, where people want the freedom to choose what is best for them, and also try to reduce the technology sprawl that they would very easily get into. Right, accessing
Mm-hmm.
cloud technologies, new platforms is always very useful. Nobody wants to, stop on the innovation and be prepared for the
Right.
future. But the other side of the coin on that front is always is at what cost, right? And whether it
Yeah.
now is
True.
the right time to make those kind of decisions. So I
Right.
think the industry is now getting mature about how to make this decision, right?
Mm-hmm.
And not to mention, security also makes a very, very important play while enterprises and mid to large level companies are making these decisions, right? because nearly every country out there in the world now has security, data privacy, data sovereignty laws that they have to adhere to, right? And again, not all cloud technologies will also be available in all of these countries. So they have to be very conscious about what they are doing and how they are doing it, right? And that is now, I think, very much ingrained in the industry. So I would say maybe 6, 7, 8 years back, you would see that certain decisions are taken without completely understanding what it really means. But the industry is definitely maturing to that level where people are realizing that this hybrid multi-cloud model has to be the kind of the driving goal, where they have the flexibility and agility to change if required, right? That has now is people are realizing that that is a very important factor to keep in mind when where they are actually building out their IT systems or modernizing their legacy applications or legacy infrastructure. So that are the, I would say, the 2 or 3 major trends that we are realizing.
Right, true. I think that very well said, Yogesh, because earlier when cloud was just a buzzword and people were just running behind cloud without understanding what cloud adoption means and what are the necessary things or resources that probably you need to have in terms of doing a cloud migration. But now I think, like you mentioned, that everybody, every industry, every organization is getting matured and able to understand and identify the areas and needs, and then hence adopt a solution that could meet their specific needs. Um, Apart from that, I think when we're talking about cloud migration, it seems very fancy, and we are very overwhelmed with the advantages that cloud brings to us. But I understand, like you said, even for Datamotive IO, I think it takes a village to deliver the results that you had just mentioned some time back about how you have helped companies cut down their cost and increase their efficiency and agility as well. So, apart from factors like cost or data security, are there any other challenges that probably the company is facing, and how would you do you have any plans or any things in pipeline that would help overcome those challenges?
Yes. So the other point I would probably say, apart from the cost and the innovation aspect, the other challenge is usually at the grassroots level, right? Whether the that company actually has the skill sets and the type of resources that would enable all of this, right? So it is eventually it all boils down to what is on the floor, the people actually working on all of these technologies, right? How experienced they are, what kind of exposure they get, right? So it eventually majority of the times it boils down to that, right? But having said that, the way we try to resolve these kind of issues or try to help our customers in these kind of issues is that we partner with a lot of serious companies, right? Whether it is IT service providers, infrastructure service providers, or it could also be technology companies like the public clouds themselves, AWS, Azure, Google Cloud, on-prem or hybrid cloud companies like VMware, Nutanix, so we actually partner with them significantly to make sure that we are meeting all the challenges that would a particular customer may face. Right. Of course, we bring in the self-service data motive technology, where we try to ensure that there is least amount of human involvement required to manage and maintain the system. They can do it by themselves. But having said that, every company will have its own set of challenges and complexities. And in those cases, if they need external help, Datamotive also partners with companies like Teloid, companies like Wipro on the service provider side. We are, of course, technology partners with NetApp, Cisco, VMware, AWS, Azure, Google Cloud, and a few other tech companies as well in that. Right. But that's where we try to combine the capabilities, combine the offerings that we have to make sure that the customer basically has one neck to choke, one point of contact to address all of these situations, and that's the combination that we are very sure that the customers would like and love, and say that okay, there is one model here which enables me to go pick and choose whatever platform, whichever cloud I want to use. Movement between them is simple, and yes, I also have the right people to work with on all of these technologies. So that's what we are how we are trying to circumvent these level of issues.
Right. I think having the right set of people and a skillful and a well-efficient team is so important, especially when you're talking about cloud migration or any such technology that we take into picture, even if it's artificial intelligence or machine learning. You really need skilled engineers or skilled AI professionals who are able to create those models and understand what goes into in building those models. So overall, if we try to wrap up, I think the power of data mobility, it helps organizations achieve an competitive edge, improve their overall performance, and even serve their customers better that way. Now, whether it is a small business or a large enterprise, I think cloud migration is itself like an entire journey that can help transform organizations and help them achieve their goals as well. Now, having said that, this is one last question for you, Yogesh, as to how do you see the industry and the outlook of business? Probably it's 2024 that we have started, and in the coming years.
Absolutely. So I think we've touched upon it in different ways already, but the hybrid multi-cloud model is here to stay. I think we can safely say that in 2024. Right? It has been a buzzword for the last 6 to 7 years, but I think people are realizing that that strategy has to be inculcated as a baseline in whatever internal strategy every customer or every enterprise or every company is doing out there. In terms of what I foresee that we go ahead is definitely on the containerization, the microservices side. So at scale, how to utilize that, right? Again, not a lot of large enterprises have completely adopted that, but those are the trends that will always be coming into play, right? If there is any mechanism where you can have distributed architectures in your applications and in your stacks, I think that will definitely be the upcoming trend. People will be leaning towards that more and more, right? As much as possible. And of course, the security aspects in a world where there are like ransomware attacks every few seconds for every major company, right? The
Right.
understanding of what your security profile looks like and what your security benchmarks are, and how do you recover from these challenges very quickly. It's a twofold problem. You have to be preventive, but there also has to be mechanisms to actually correct yourself if something goes wrong. Right? If you actually let some hacker through into your account, then how do you take care of it? So these become very, very important driving factors. And I think these are the key areas which will kind of decide the next few years of how people actually look at their infrastructure and how seamless they really want to make them, and how they are even building their applications, keeping these considerations in mind.
Right, definitely. I think the overall technology landscape is constantly changing, and so are storage vendors' offerings. So, companies need a solid data mobility strategy in place to pivot at the moment's notice and take advantage of newer and more cost effective capabilities. Now, it also helps companies with the flexibility, like you said, the freedom that your solutions are providing, and it helps them to stay competitive, achieve a sustainable growth that way. And I think it also eventually helps all the data keepers and workers very productive as well. Well, thank you so much, Yogesh, for taking out time and sharing knowledge with us. I think it was quite an insightful podcast that we have, and it helped us understand the offerings of the company and how useful I think cloud migration is, and your key significance when it comes to cloud migration. So, thank you so much for your time. It was a pleasure having you with us today.
Thank you so much, Priya. Really excited about this conversation. Really appreciate your time. Thank you.
Definitely. Thank you so much.